I don't know what's wrong with my laptop. It was just terrible. Anyway.
If other Chiara, Felix, Ratti, and Manuel are online, so they can join us.
Yeah, go ahead and please bring up your executive members, and then we will have them on screen with us. And I know that Attila will be coming in shortly.
Okay, excuse me, Ethan, I don't know how to use it. How can I bring them in?
I'm bringing them up, that's fine. Just tell them, I'm telling you to tell them to bring up. Okay, and then when you're not, great, okay, here we go, great. There they are.
I think it should work now. Good evening.
Nice to see you guys.
Hi,
we
Felix.
Have Chiara Passini and Nico Seger's coming in. Okay, looks like a good group thus far.
It's Chiara, Felix, Ratti, Baktadze, and Manuel dos Santos.
Perfect.
Okay.
And now I'll be bringing up our president now. So can everybody who's not speaking mute your mics, because that will help out as far as clarity goes.
Yeah, I can see you.
Chiara, could you please, and Nico, Chiara, Manuel, could you please mute your microphones, please? Thank you very much. And I believe Attila should be coming in now. Here he comes in again. Sometimes there's a few seconds delay. Let me try to find our president here. Sorry.
Okay.
There you are. Great. Attila, if you are in, could you please try and reconnect and ask for the floor, then I'll bring you up. Here he comes. Try again. Here he comes. Great. And I will mute myself.
Okay. Yeah, finally I could.
Welcome. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to start whenever you're ready, Gina.
Okay, we can start. I don't know if
I have one more person requesting the floor, Ratti Baktadze.
Yes, he is the VP for communication. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep, let's start.
Okay. Dear YATA National Chapter.
We seem to have lost her. Okay, let's see if we can pull her back up. Thank you all for your patience. I've been understanding that this is a new platform for you all. We have been using it for a year, so to me it seems like it's normal, but it takes a few seconds for the learning curve. Well, tell her. Well, since it seems like we've lost Gina temporarily, and in the interest of time, perhaps I'll do this, and I can turn the floor over to our two speakers. As I noted earlier, this is an event that we're looking forward to. Our President Attila Mesterhazy of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly has agreed to have a moment to speak with some of the members of the Youth Atlantic Treaty Association. And we also are privileged enough to have the president, Mr. Jim Townsend, with us. I know that Jim's going to say a few opening remarks about YATA and YATA's priorities right now, and then we'll turn the floor over to Attila. And then I believe we're going to be open for a dialogue and discussion about what we listened to. All right. So Jim, perhaps I can turn over to you first. You need to unmute your mic.
Yeah. How about that? Is that good? Hello, everyone. It's early afternoon here in Washington, but I'm sure you're finishing dinner right now wherever you are. And thank you so much for everyone putting this together. This is an important time for us to have a discussion about what we are seeing for the future in terms of the transatlantic relationship. Here in Washington, of course, we're in the midst of a never-ending presidential campaign, and so the ability to coordinate with the NATO Parliamentary Assembly as well as with YATA, the youth wing of the Atlantic Treaty Association. This is an important opportunity for our allies and our partners to have an idea of what's happening in Washington and what a Biden administration might look like as we deal with Europe and as we deal with transatlantic issues and try to recover from the last 4 years of a time when transatlantic relations were not the top of the priority list. But the Atlantic Treaty Association itself is undergoing a complete renovation. YATA, of course, is that youth wing. And we have helping us David Hobbs, who I think the NATO parliamentary certainly know him very well. He's done a wonderful job with the MPA, and he's going to help us in the ATA to pull ourselves from the 1950s in terms of the Constitution and what we look like and how we operate. And we're all of us together. A new bureau has been elected, and we are all going to pull the ATA into the 21st century. You will see this come to full flower by March when this new bureau that was elected to do the renaissance of the ATA, we will turn over to a brand new team, a new ATA to drive around, and one that is going to have closer relations with NATO, as well as with the chapters, and one that's an enabler for the chapters, so that there is a lot more that the chapters can do in helping NATO and in terms of its outreach. So we're doing today what I think the MPA did a year or so ago. And so what we're going to do is hopefully be as successful as you all, and play our role in terms of reaching to alliance publics to talk about the importance of NATO, what NATO is doing, and how the chapters themselves can help. I'm finding that the engine of the ATA is really YATA, and I appreciate the MPA talking with YATA, telling the YATA folks how the MPA did its renaissance, but even more importantly, to have a discussion between all of us about what the MPA plans to do, and then in the coming year or two to take advantage of a new era of transatlantic friendship that's coming in Washington, and what the ATA will do. We both organizations have big roles to play. One involving the legislature in each of the allied partner countries, and the other involving the people. And that's where I come in, and I'm excited by what I think we'll be able to provide to a brand new government that will come in March. Everything from a new constitution to financial solvency, which is always important, as well as content. But at the end of the day, we want an ATA and ATA headquarters to no longer be a club for older folks who are leaving government as admirals and ministers. It's going to be something that will certainly have our seasoned members coming out of government, like myself, came out of the Pentagon for many years. We will certainly have them as being major important parts, but young people will be playing roles, women. This is going to be a much more diverse ATA, governed by a diverse group of ATA members, and it's going to be doing things that are different and things that we haven't done back in the 1950s and 1960s as the ATA was getting started. So lots of new things ahead. Really looking forward to it. YATA is the engine, and the MPA inspires us every day. So I will leave it there and turn it over to the MPA.
Thanks very much. That was excellent. Jim, it's always great to hear you speak. You've welcomed my delegation so many times in Washington, so glad that you're on board and glad that David Hobbs is on board as well. So with that being said, Attila, please take the floor and we'll happy to listen to you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for welcoming me and for organizing this great event. I'm pleased to see such a positive turnout for this event. Thank you, Jim, as well as for taking part in the discussion. Jim has been a long-time friend of the Assembly, as just Ethan said before. And much happened since you briefed us or Defense and Security Committee 1 year ago when we were in Washington. Not least your election as a president of the Atlantic Treaty Associations. So I would like to congratulate you on this occasion. I was grateful to hear your introductory remarks, and I think they help situate this event quite well. And before I forget, it's written for me that I have to tell. Ethan is a very precise guy and a great expert. So I have to tell you that before I forget, I would like to remind you that we are running a small poll on the NATO PA LinkedIn and Facebook pages. So do not forget to participate and share your opinion. Ethan, was I good? Okay, I don't forget. Okay, so now I have your undivided attention for the next few minutes. I would like to highlight some aspects of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and its work on key issues impacting Euro-Atlantic security. I look forward to an open and engaging discussion with you on any particular issues you may wish to address afterwards. I know that Jim has also agreed to weigh in on a few issues. With all of his years in Pentagon, I may lean on him for a few questions if it will be necessary. The NATO PA is a unique organization. It provides a forum for parliamentarians from across the alliance and across the political spectrum too, to focus on key issues affecting Euro-Atlantic security, thereby supporting parliamentary oversight of allied defense and security. Working together in the Assembly, NATO parliamentarians help strengthen the transatlantic link and values of NATO, which ultimately seeks to make the Euro-Atlantic region safe for democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and the free exchange of ideas, people, and goods. The NATO PA believes strongly in these values. They are the principles driving our work, and we also work with our peers outside the alliance in partner nations to help them build strong parliaments that may be able to deliver on the same promises. We are currently involved with our annual session, which gathers lawmakers from across the alliance and NATO partner nations. Of course, due to the pandemic-related restrictions, this session is being held entirely online, which is a historic momentum because this is the first ever online meeting in our life. Our sessions are very big events that combine all 5 committees for a series of meetings about the reporting for the year. They also bring in expert speakers to cover a range of topics related to reporting and the Assembly's priorities. We will also have a presentation from and a discussion with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Yesterday, we reviewed the committee's special report on COVID-19 and the wide-ranging impact of the crisis on our societies, or economies, as well as on transatlantic and global security. Our committees have drawn up 6 excellent reports on the different dimensions of this crisis. We will also discuss the many security challenges we must continue to face, Russia's aggressive actions and ambitious military modernization, the ongoing threat of terrorism, instability in our neighborhood from the Black Sea to the Gulf, the unfinished Euro-Atlantic integration of the Western Balkans, and the disruptive impact of emerging technologies. The Assembly's priorities adapt and evolve with the international security environment, sometimes in reaction to, but often in anticipation of the over-the-horizon impact of an evolving challenge or threat. This very much reflects the changing priorities and focus of the NATO alliance more broadly. NATO has been adapting continuously since its founding. It has grown in members, shifted priorities, added missions and operations, expanded its core tasks, etc. A key shift came in 2014 when the alliance felt it had to respond to an increasingly aggressive Russia. The illegal and illegitimate annexation of Crimea and its action in eastern Ukraine really shifted perspectives in the alliance about the realities of a new era of strategic competition with a revisionist Russia. Russia was making it increasingly clear it was actively seeking to undermine NATO cohesion and policy anywhere it could. To counter Russia's increasingly aggressive foreign policy, allies adopted their defense and deterrence posture to demonstrate the strengths of the alliance and send a strong signal to Moscow that allies will not be bullied into accepting a Russian dictate. Since 2014, NATO has implemented the biggest collective defense overhaul and reinforcement in over a generation. Alliance posture from the Baltic to the Black Sea is stronger. Collective action is increasing the ability of transatlantic force and equipment movement. European political and security cooperation is allowing for greater mobility of NATO forces from west to east. Allies are modernizing command and control structures, and NATO has stepped up on increased resilience to cyber and hybrid threats. We will continue to bolster the credibility of allies' defense and deterrence posture as a means of countering Russian aggression and interference. Allies have also worked hard in their outreach to help those key partners that have been most impacted by Russia's regional aggressions. None have been more so than Ukraine and Georgia. Both have borne the brunt of Russia's military aggression. Each now has territory occupied illegally, and Ukraine is engaged in a direct conflict with Russian forces in its eastern territories. Partnership outreach to help strengthen Georgia and Ukraine at all levels is having a significant impact. Both nations continue to transform and build robust institutions at home that have allowed them to move closer to the alliance, both militarily and politically. The NATO PA works closely with both the Ukrainian and Georgian parliaments to help each to build strong parliamentary bodies capable of overseeing their new, more capable defense institutions and more. In addition to a revisionist Russia, however, the alliance is now also increasingly feeling out the kind of relationship it will have with the rising China in the coming years. The challenges posed by China's rise and global ambitions have increasingly been featuring on the Assembly's agenda. NATO leaders recently decided that allies need to address China's growing influence and international policies together. In the statement that followed the leaders' meeting in London this past December, allies referred to China as both an opportunity and a challenge. To be honest, I see it as more of a challenge than opportunity. China has similar geopolitical ambitions as Russia, but a smarter and more effective approach. It uses tanks and banks also. So without losing the sight of the opportunities, we must better identify the direct challenges China's global ambitions and actions, as well as its cooperation with Russia, pose to NATO and the allies. And we must learn the lesson from the COVID-19 crisis in terms of China's disinformation and propaganda campaign, and the risk stemming from our dependence on China in some strategic sectors. I regret that Europe has not yet developed a common approach to Huawei's access to 5G infrastructure. In short, China must start acting as a responsible global player, but we can no longer afford to be naive about its ambitions and role. Finally, transatlantic relations have never been static. They have been characterized by ups and downs. but all members have always remained fully dedicated to common purpose of defending allied populations and territories and making our alliance safe for the common values that brought allies together in the first place back at the beginning of the Cold War. This remains true today. Allies are investing wholeheartedly in their common defense. They are united in their view of their enduring interests. They remain credible in their commitment to their common future. With that, I will now pause to let us begin our discussion. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and to talking about those issues you find to be the most pressing for NATO today. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. President. It seems as though we lost Gina again, unfortunately. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to questions. I know that the executive committee here has a set of questions, and so whoever would like to start first, I think you might have already had an order. Perhaps we can call on Manuel. Would you like to ask a question? Or I don't know if you had the order set up.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Ethan Corbin. Mr. Mesterhazy, it's a big pleasure for us on behalf of our YATA network to have the chance to be with you today, and also to Mr. President Jim Townsend from ATA. We are glad to have this opportunity to strengthen the network between YATA, NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and also ATA. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Mr. President Mesterhazy, I would like to start by presenting you myself. First of all, my name is Manuel Santos. I'm the president of YATA Portugal and also Secretary General of YATA International. It has been a fantastic path, always promoting our common values, reflected on the primacy of freedom, democracy, pluralism, and collective security. And for us, our purpose is to spread the word and to have as many people as we can spreading our values and democracy. I would like to present you some questions that we have of several members of our YATA network. Actually, I have 5 questions for you. Maybe it's better if I can ask these 5 questions at once. Is it feasible for you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you so much. So I will start by presenting you 4 questions for our colleagues and friends from YATA Belgium. So the first one is, given the ongoing tense situation and standoff between Russia and NATO, would it be wise from a NATO perspective to continue to offer the chance to Georgia and Ukraine for membership accession? The second question that I have for you, also from YATA Belgium, to what extent would you say are Russia or China involved in the difficulties noted between Turkey and some of its NATO allies, for instance, Greece or France? The third question, does NATO have a specific plan to involve the youth from countries like Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Israel in the alliance's security issues and projects? Please let me know if I'm going too fast. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. President. The fourth question, also, and the last one from YATA Belgium. The awareness of the transatlantic relations is vital. It was said by the President, Nicolas Segiers from YATA Belgium. What can NATO Parliamentary Assembly specifically do to assure additional funding regarding initiatives such as exchange programs? And my last question on behalf of my colleagues from YATA Portugal, we would like to know your opinion regarding the topic of the pandemic COVID-19. And this is a personal question as well. Given the pandemic we all face, Mr. President, do you consider that NATO should have been better prepared to provide assistance to the alliance member countries? Do you think it's feasible that NATO creates a strategic-oriented plan with several medical supplies and health resources to provide to civil society in case we face a new pandemic like COVID-19, or even against the so-called biological wars? So thank you so much to all of you, and specifically to you, Mr. President. It's an honor for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethan, what would be the best to answer these questions or collect more? What was the
That was a
procedure?
good. I think we had that we would bundle a first group, answer them, and then move on to a next group.
So now I can respond to these questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, I think it's a very important question. The first one, you said that is it a good idea to invite those countries to be a member, or at least open the door for them to be members of NATO, countries like Ukraine and Georgia. And you have to know that sometimes in the assembly also we have these kind of debates, and you will understand at the end that why I'm telling you, because of course several times came up the idea that okay, we can offer this possibility to these countries, but the reality is different. The reality is that they never can be members of the alliance, and of course it's just a PR, but Russia won't let them to join the NATO. And I think it's a matter of principles, because in the NATO treaty, you know perhaps better than me, I think that, but Ethan will correct me, I think the 10th paragraph of the NATO treaty, Washington Treaty, is about the open door policy, which means that every sovereign nation has the right to decide whether they want to join or not to this alliance. And it should be based, or must be based, on the fact that they are eligible. I mean, they can fulfill the criteria which is needed to have the accession or from that country. And this is a really important theoretical question. It's a really important principle of this alliance, that we accept the fact that all nations are sovereign and they can decide whatever they want, where they want to join. Perhaps the EU, for example, perhaps NATO does the same position in both organizations. And sometimes we have different approaches. Just I tell you, for example, Serbia, they don't want to join NATO, but they want to join the European Union. So it's not always that the case that you can say that those who would like to join the EU, they want NATO, or vice versa. So that's why I have to tell you that this is the only idea which we can offer to any other countries, not just Georgia or Ukraine, but any other sovereign nations, that they can decide. And we are very much engaged with this principle, I mean the open door policy, and we don't care what, in this way, we don't care what Russia thinks about these issues. I have to tell you that when Hungary joined the NATO, 1998, in that time, of course, we also had, some kind of feelings that what will Russia say about this accession, this formerly not occupied, but in that camp, we were in that camp, I'm the Soviet Union's peace camp. Or, for example, with the Baltic states, that was the same. That what will happen if they can join the NATO? And of course, at the end, we could say that nothing happened in this regard. So yes, to be short, I think that's the only right, way of thinking, to say that we have an open door policy, and the accession just depending on your capability, or how can you fulfill the criteria which is needed to be able to join the NATO. But I could say the same with the EU, just to make some comparison. But of course, I still know that what are the realities, and I know that it's with some of the countries are more difficult, and some other countries it could be easier. The second question was about Turkey versus France or Greece. I think these conflicts, it's a quite new phenomenon, because I'm in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly since 2006, and some years ago it was not a common or not frequent that we have this kind of bilateral conflicts on the table of the Assembly or in some committees. But now, in the last year, we have more and more conflicts like this. And of course, we try to give an open platform to discuss honestly, frankly, these kind of discussions. And sometimes it's easier to do that, or it's a more relaxed way how we can do that in the Assembly, because of course we are politicians. It's a kind of parliament of the NATO, so that's why we have more relaxed environment and more tools, perhaps, without any restrictions to discuss these issues. But I would say that now these conflicts are not generated by China or Russia. I think some of these conflicts are rooted very much in the history. And of course, sometimes it's coming up and intensifying these conflicts, and sometimes it's more calm or relaxed and more neutral, the situation between these countries. But definitely, if we have these kind of conflicts in the NATO or among or between NATO countries, then of course Russia and China would like to use that occasion to somehow undermine the cohesion and solidarity of the countries, member countries of the alliance. And of course, from their point of view, that's absolutely understandable approach, that they want to somehow make these alliance weaker. That's the same with the EU, for example, because there are some common policies or common declarations of EU where, of course, China would like to somehow, stop these kind of procedures. So I think now these conflicts are not because of Russia or China, but definitely they will use, or they try to use, these conflicts to weaken the alliance. Well, to involve the use, especially you mentioned some of the countries, or general approach, of course, is that, and my personal opinion is also the same, that we must involve or engage the youth in this sphere of interest, or in this field, because if we do not involve the youth, or at least we do not share the information why is important an alliance than NATO, then sometimes it causes the problem, because the younger generation perhaps doesn't support at the same level of the NATO than the older generation, and it's because of the fact sometimes that they don't have the information, and of course, but they have the luxury to say that they live in peace and security, and sometimes they do not connect the two, that the peace and security which is provided to them is not just coming from out of the blue, is because of these kind of alliances and cooperations like NATO. So I think this is the most successful organization, international organizations in the history that could create peace and stability in the region and regions and in the involved countries. So that's why I think it's a high priority to involve the young people, and not just the young people, but of course the general public, because without general public support we cannot fulfill our missions, and we cannot cope the challenges. So yes, that's the general approach. And of course, it's a little bit more difficult if we are talking about the practical way how we can involve the guys. We have, for example, excellent research assistants who helping Ethan and all the other directors in the committees. Of course, it's not a big group of people, but still there are some excellent candidates for these positions in every year. And of course, I always use, and my colleagues use the possibility when we are in a different country or we have a program, we try to reach out to young people. When last time when we were in Washington, I think Ethan, you organized the meeting with the Johns Hopkins University, if I'm right. And we invited those students who studied, I think, international relations and security issues, and it was really interesting how they see the NATO and the European security situation. So we try to engage them, to involve them in this. So I'm very much happy if we can find ways how can we engage these particular countries and their use into our work. Sometimes it's more difficult because we don't have too many programs in Azerbaijan or in Israel or the countries you just mentioned. So it's always easier to organize a meeting when we are in that certain country. But now, for example, with this online version of our work, I think it has some kind of advantage that we can organize easier this kind of event. So maybe Ethan could write down this idea that how can we, for example, let to come in to these kind of discussions, the guys you just mentioned. Well, to funding exchange programs, that's always the most sensitive thing if you are talking about an international organizations, because it is financed by the member states. So it's a very limited and very strict rules we have how we can finance the NATO PA. And of course, it's a flat budget, more or less. Now, because of the pandemic, we have some residuum because we cannot spend on the personal the programs where we can present ourselves in personal, but still it's a quite limited budget. We could say that this is this budget efficient or enough to say so. But it's quite difficult to increase the budget. So we cannot just launch new projects because we don't have the funding for that. And for example, during now this pandemic year, I have had to, and my colleagues, the treasurer and American head of delegation, Mr. Jerry Connolly, we had to fight sometimes with our colleagues in the assembly because we wanted to keep that money put into residuum, not to give back to the countries, because there was a push from some of the countries that it would be a nice gesture to pay back those money which were given to us, and it's a symbolical thing that we pay back the money. But I was very much resisted against this idea, because I am a politician, so I know if you give back money, then it's quite difficult to get back again. So we said that we put in a certain budget line and keep it for the next year, and perhaps we can engage in more projects then. So I cannot answer a yes to your fourth question that it's easy to fund exchange programs. And the last one, which is also an important one, I would say that NATO did quite a lot regarding the pandemic. We have perhaps Ethan could send you the report which we prepared on the COVID-19 pandemic. I asked all the committees that they should examine the effects of the pandemic, of course, on the defense side, on the economic side of security, etc., etc. So so I think now we have, Ethan, we have five reports. All the committees had prepared the report, no, on COVID-19.
All committees did, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, one was prepared by myself with the help of Ethan. And in that report, it's quite detailed that how many times we had a cooperation with the member states, even with the United Nations. So NATO did a lot during the pandemic. Of course, it was mainly logistical and humanitarian support. And of course, I would say that now we are much more prepared for this kind of situation than 5 years ago, to be honest. But you have to keep in mind that there's a group of countries in the NATO, and they are very conservative in this regard, because usually we have the debate, how can we or should we expand the range of activities of NATO, or should we stay to the core activities of NATO? And it's always a little fight or discussion that if something new is coming, I mean the security environment changing, the world is changing, and it's always a debate that NATO should cope with these challenges, or it's a national issue or responsibility. So you may know that or remember still that the terrorism was not obvious that NATO should do something with this question. Now it's of course now it's obvious that we have to engage together. But I could tell you another one, which is the hybrid warfare, where the disinformation, the fake news, and all these stuff, or when there are some cyber actions against different countries, that there's a debate, still ongoing debate in the NATO, and of course in the NATO PA also, that where is the limit where for example you trigger the Article 5th, where is the, when all the member states should act if there's attack on different countries or one member state. So it makes sense to have a dialogue and discussion about that, because when we were in Washington last time, we had a very interesting conversation at the think tank. I cannot recall the name of that. I think this is the new American security strategy. What was the name of that?
Center for New American Security.
Yeah. And they had a very nice and very interesting argumentation that perhaps it's not good to set a limit when you have to trigger the Article 5, for example. So it is a really interesting that sometimes it's not just a political blah blah, or sometimes it makes sense to think it a little bit more deeper and more thorough what we should do or not in this regard. But this is always a development. That's what I wanted to say, and it's a normal procedure. So I think now NATO will understand, and the countries and member states, that the pandemic situation could be security risk, and of course, as you just mentioned, it could be a biological weapon which could cause the same situation easily. So that's why it's much closer to the core activities of NATO. So yeah, perhaps I answered the questions, I guess. I hope. If not, then please just tell me. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Attila Mesterhazy. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ethan, can I go?
You are the president of YATA, so we
you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm very sorry for missing the first part, which was most important. I want to thank every one of you that have joined this important event. It's important to maintain the youth generation well informed on the most vital issues, and in this pandemic era, we are trying to translate challenges into opportunities, even though in a new platform, let's say. And in order to create responsible future leaders committed to the values of the North Atlantic Treaty with a clear understanding of today, my question, or I would like to share with you the question of Ilya from Macedonia, which is in regards of the new centuries threat that we are facing. And those threats, as you also mentioned, are the disinformation war and the fake news campaigns that a lot of countries are facing. So how can we as young people from 37 countries develop a centralized approach in countering fake news and disinformation narratives that can help us at first place, but also the Alliance and other international organizations to fight with? Should there be some specific programs or actions to take in this regard? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Should we take one more question as well?
Yeah, of course, of course.
The next questioner, please.
Good evening. I'm Chiara Cusini, and I'm the Executive Vice President of YATA International. I have two questions, if I may. The first one, last year in London, the Secretary General stressed the necessity to a collective response to the emergence of China as a global power. It is a leader in 5G communication, in artificial intelligence, in hypersonic weapons, and together with its capacity to produce disinformation campaign, China represents a threat to the security of the alliance. So my question is, how is NATO preparing to respond to these technological challenges coming from China? And this is my first question. My second question is about divergence in foreign policy among NATO member states affected by Chinese company investment in strategic infrastructure. As these Chinese companies continue to invest in ports in Europe, what are the challenges to NATO mobility? How does NATO plan to tackle them? And lastly, how can the alliance achieve an unified foreign policy among its members countries in these regards? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think these are very interesting questions. And furthermore, these are the questions which are on the table of NATO nowadays. And first of all, I think the fake news and all these disinformation efforts, these are getting more and more important for the countries, because several times we experience that there are interference in our democratic system. For example, the US, and I'm quite sure that Jim could tell much more about this, but this is a quite reality in the United States, not just now perhaps, but at the last elections. So it's very much it's not just an accident. Of course, it's very conscious military operations several times, which is done by Russia or China or even North Korea, which we can also mention. And I think on the level of the average citizen, I think it's very important to inform the citizens or disseminate the information that Facebook is a blessing and a curse. I would say that, of course, it's a very useful tool for a lot of purposes, but it's a very dangerous tool also. And now you see the debates in the United States with these big companies, tech companies, but also there are some debates and initiatives in Europe. How can we push them to regulate themselves? But first of all, on the level of the general citizen, I think that we should teach them or educate them as a public education that first of all, it's not everything is true what you can read in Facebook, and of course you have to search for the origin of the information, for example. So not to believe at the first sight that we read something. And nowadays I read a survey that even at Facebook, the people usually doesn't read the whole article, just the title of the article. So if it's a very much click-catching title of the article, then it has much bigger impact than the whole text of the article. So that's why I think we have to educate the people that how they should use Facebook and what are the traps and the tricky actions of different adversaries of, for example, NATO. So I think that's what we can do to our societies first. And I think if we can reach step by step that goal, that they will be a little bit more cautious to using these platforms, then I think we are much better situation. And of course, NATO has a center for that. So NATO also dealing with these issues started in some years ago. So it's a quite new organization in the NATO structure, but they are experts, and of course they deal with IT side of it, but some other hybrid warfare type of actions they are countering. So it's really interesting how they try to cope with this challenge on the level of NATO. And Chiara, you just mentioned China. I think this is the biggest topic in NATO. I think I had to learn that when I became president, that I have to use the wording China is a challenge and opportunity and not a threat. And you should know that Russia's actions are threat, but not China. So that's why I would say, I always joking and in my speech I said that I think it's more of a challenge than an opportunity, because China is so big that what can you do? Look, during this pandemic, there's just one economy which has a big growth. That's the Chinese economy. And we are very much dependent on different sectors. We just refer to that the mass diplomacy of China. And of course, this was a quite strong tool for China to influence the European countries. I think perhaps you are from Italy. I'm not sure, but you are from Italy. So your government, after the first wave of the pandemic, before they decided not to join the Belt and Road Initiative of China, but after the pandemic, when they got some important help from China, they decided to join the Belt and Road Initiative. And I'm coming from Hungary. Our government loves China, so we already joined that initiative, which is a geopolitical approach of China. And you should know that the Chinese diplomats are prohibited to use geopolitical, this wording regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. So it's a quite clear geopolitical goal behind of this economic or commercial or infrastructural plan of China, but of course it is serving the interest of the Chinese government or their national interests. So I think now we cannot find the right answer for your question, because among the members of NATO, for example, there are different approaches. If we are talking about, for example, the 5G, the Huawei company, we have quite different approaches. We have some countries, bunch of countries, they follow the US guidelines regarding the 5G. Some of them has well, yes and no type of actions, and some of the countries, for example, Hungary, doesn't care about what the US telling to the NATO countries in this regard. So I think there are different national interests, which based on, of course, economical interest and direct for indirect investment of the Chinese companies. So I usually, and not just me, of course, experts call this a predatory investment of China, because they do not use now tanks, in Europe at least. They use banks to come and finance. And of course, it's the strongest tie. If you give loans to the governments, then of course they cannot pay it back, and then of course you can ask a favor, and that's how China tries to influence these countries, even, and not just in Europe, but you can name several occasions for example in Australia, or those countries which are around Australia, not big countries but important geopolitically. And of course, for example, Africa also is a target for the Chinese government. So I think it's getting a bigger and bigger challenge for the NATO countries. And you mentioned, and it's very rightly said, that the technological gap between China and the NATO countries is weaker and weaker. So now it's there are some initiatives you just mentioned where China is world leading. So it's not true now that they just copying or stealing these kind of secrets. Sometimes they are they have cutting edge technologies. Sometimes we are the followers in this regard. So I think that's a big issue, how we can manage. And we can, of course, on the other hand, we say in Hungary as a joke that if it's not made in China, that this is not original. Because all the articles coming from China, and we are very much dependent on the parts of production. So I think it's a huge part, and I think we should be very smart. How can we manage this situation? Because on one hand, as we just said, it's economically it's important, but on the other hand, it's a great challenge militarily, security. So it's really big chunk to chew. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, President Mesterhazy, for this opportunity today, which provides a unique platform for the youth across the alliance to ask questions about NATO and its future challenges. I am Felix de Brenti, Vice President for Public Diplomacy at YATA International, Vice President at the Hungarian Atlantic Council, and President of YATA Hungary. And now I would turn quickly to my questions. And the first one is this: China is an evolving power, which has an impact on the global balance of power. This poses a challenge for NATO. My question would be how NATO will approach China. Will it use the dual track approach, which on one hand is deterrence and defense, on the other, the dialogue approach, which it uses in relation with Russia, or it has another concept? And my second question would be the following. NATO member countries strive to meet with the 2% of GDP requires. It results in a new wave of armament in Europe. Besides, the other states of the globe are also enhancing their militaries. Will this trend generate a new arms race in the world, which could be a great security risk? What is the future of arms control agreement, and will NATO take a role in them? Thank you.
Yep. Shall I answer, or?
I think, yeah, we're about 4 minutes left, and I know that you have to move on to another event, sir. So I think we should round out with this question. Also, it's great that it's a fellow Hungarian who asked it. I think that might be the good way to end.
Okay, and then perhaps I will ask Jim to answer the arm control issue, because you said that it could be a change, the approach of the United States government and the president in this regard. So perhaps it could be a good opportunity to share some thoughts of you about this issue. That what do you expect in this regard? So first, I think there will be a dual track approach, definitely, with China or regarding China, because I said China is economically is very important for all the countries, and of course it's a strong power in this regard. So you cannot say that we don't have to do anything with China, just focus on the deterrence and these kind of approaches. So I think there should be some kind of dialogue, of course, but we have to keep in mind that it doesn't mean that if China doesn't respect the rules-based, international order, then we cannot, push them or nudge them or whatever. That they should act as a power which respect these rules which are set for the international relations. So definitely there will be. It's a quite interesting idea that several times came up the idea that NATO should create the same council than we had with Russia, because there is a NATO-Russia council. Of course, it doesn't work, and it was not efficient. But still, I think the Chinese has a different approach. So some experts and some of my colleagues as politicians, usually before some years ago also, but nowadays also suggest that we should create a NATO-China Council or something like that. It won't happen, to be honest, but I think it's a good idea. It's my personal point of view, of course. So I do not say that we should be one-sided with China. We should have a dialogue. We should have a cooperation, but of course it should be based on certain rules and criteria that, of course, all the partners should keep in mind and respect. With this GDP percentage, I think mainly the 2% is not the best tool to somehow sharing the burdens, but still there should be something. And I think we could not find out nothing else better than the 2% of the GDP should be spent on the military expenditures. Most of the NATO countries could not fulfill, but at least now most of them, or almost all of them, has at least a plan how can they reach they have a national plan how can they reach the 2% of the GDP. While innovate already arm race control, arm race, as you just mentioned, because of course we have supersonic weapons now and some other modernizations, or the artificial intelligence, or the Ethan, what is the exact English word for that? The autonomous weapons. So it's not automatic,
autonomous
but
systems. Yeah, autonomous.
Yeah, it's a quite new. Innovation in this field. So there are a lot of innovations and research and developments, and of course this is always a competition, so I could not say that it's not, but definitely there are some fields of this where you should have these kind of agreements, as you just mentioned. And that's why I would like to ask now Jim to weigh in and tell some words about the possible new approach of the president-elect about these issues, the arm control and all these agreements, which can be seen as a regulator of a new arm race. So please, Jim.
You need to unmute your mic, Mr. Townsend. Sorry.
There you go. There we go. Unfortunately, I've got to leave as well for another podcast. I've got 3 podcasts today. This is, and so, but I will say that the Biden administration very much sees arms control as part of national security. It's got a role to play. I think you'll see that the Biden administration will move quickly to renew START 2, New START, and to move New START into other areas if they can, in terms of numbers of warheads and that type of thing. I think there's a group within the Biden regimes that we have an understanding too that China needs to be part of this at some point, and that we've got to deal with the follow-on to the INF Treaty, of which, of course, we withdrew from and the Russians breached. So when you look at open skies as well, I think there's a belief that open skies plays an important role too. So when you look at arms control in the context of the Biden administration, I think you'll see an administration that is that understands that there's a role for arms control as you look at your national security environment, as you deal with Russia particularly. There's an arms control environment that China needs to fit into as well. And so I would hope within pretty quickly after taking the office, the Biden administration will let its arms control philosophy and what its goals are in arms control. I hope they will let us all know that. But it's certainly different than the administration that is outgoing. And so I think we're looking forward to a very realistic and pragmatic arms control regime that's fully verifiable and something that adds to security. So I'll end it there.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We hope that this will be a reality, not just
Whoops, seems like we lost our president. Perhaps on that note, since you do have to leave, Jim, thank you very much. And I'll say that it was an excellent session, I thought. So I really appreciate all of you taking the time to really think about some excellent and engaging, challenging questions. I'm not that old, but I will say I'm of a different generation, and I'm encouraged by the level of sophistication of those questions. So that was really shows you're quite engaged, and I really think it's a great thing. So as always, we do enjoy working with YATA, and we do want to say that the NATO PA does always seek to find new ways to cooperate. So thank you all for your participation. I'm easy enough to find. You can easily find my email if you need to ask me any questions, and I'm happy to work with you on to the extent possible on anything. All right. Thank you very much. Jim, do you want to say anything, or Gina?
Yes, thank you very much, all of you, for being present here. And I'm just enthusiastic and positive that the pandemic will end soon. And our YATA representatives and chapters will be part again on the NATO Parliamentary Assembly session. So we are just looking forward to meet you during spring session, maybe of 2021. Thank you very much for all of you who have joined tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. That was excellent. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Excellent. Okay, I will probably, unless I see anything else here, is that, Attila's trying to come back in. I think he might, well, I think we have to jump onto a new meeting anyway. I can't hear you, Attila.
Yeah, I was lost in space. Sorry.
It's okay. I congratulated them on some very sophisticated and excellently posed questions on really good subjects, and I thought it was a really great event. So thank you, Attila, for helping out, and I think that everyone valued it very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good luck.
All right. Take care. Good luck, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.